Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Star, and welcome to another episode of Man Speak. Man Speak is an offshoot to our Heart Warriors series where some of our Heart Warriors come back and they talk for a whole other episode on things that they're passionate about and able to teach and just share with us as a general learning. Sorry, it's really early in the morning here. I need to get my words right. So today I'm really excited to have Sacha Stone back. Now, Sacha was our Heart Warrior number 24, and he's also done quite a few Man Speak episodes. So make sure you check those out. Now, if you don't know Sacha, he is one of our formidable truth warriors, doing so many amazing things in the world. He's also got a lot of exciting medical developments going on to clean up the mess of the past 3 years. So make sure you check out those links, which I will drop all in the comment in the section below. And he's also got a huge project going on in Mexico, in Bacalar, New Earth Sanctuary, with amazing bioarchitecture and the latest developments in technology and healthcare, and just living in, a better world. But maybe what I love most about all that Sacha does is he always brings everything back to a high level of consciousness and awareness, reminding us that ultimately we are the creators in the quantum realm, and this is how we are going to change our world. So thanks for being here and enjoy. Hey, Sacha, welcome back to Man Speak. How are you?
Always good to see you, and happy felicitations for the season. I'm not going to say happy Christmas because I don't go there. It's nice to be off the treadmill.
Yeah, definitely. And I did my intro and I mentioned all the amazing things that you're doing. And then I realized I forgot to also say you're a poet. And as I like to refer to you, a divine poet, but I've never asked you if you actually like that title, those two words together.
Well, you might know my brand of cynicism. The short answer is no, but in much the same way that I don't like the term sacred geometry either. I just think that increasingly we have to regard everything as being divine and as being a sacrament and as being sacred. In that sense, that's the only way that I can intellectually describe the importance of the geometry of now. The living moment must always be sanctified. It must always be you must always apprehend your state of witness in that sacrament, in that state of grace, which is to recognize even the contrast and the so-called evil, to regard that as divinely anointed and appointed as well.
Okay, so I'll just say poet in future, shall I?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Now, I've often heard you refer to, excuse me, the alphabet of the human heart. What exactly do you mean by that term?
Well, I didn't know for a long time, time inverted commas. I didn't know, and I was in search of the alphabet of the human heart. Was how I described, I guess, the search for relevancy, the greater relevancy, and the journey that I began approaching a quarter of a century ago, when I set up my Peace Foundation and began the kind of citizen diplomacy work and doing what I could to investigate the human condition. And the way I couched it was I was in search of the alphabet of the human heart, the A, B, C. That ended up kind of morphing fortuitously into the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness. So the A, B, C became art, beauty, and consciousness. And then that's become so the strapline for the New Earth project, the New Earth University, certainly. When we step away from time and money and fear, which is when I started speaking publicly about a decade ago, came out of the closet, and And it was really on that premise. I was speaking at that point to time, money, and fear, and to a world beyond time and money and fear. What does that look like, and why is it important? And when we make a departure from time, from the fiction of time, which is entropy and disease and death and scarcity and poverty and misery and destructivity, all of that stuff is attendant upon the idea of time. And when we evolve individually, consciously beyond the grip of time and enter into the state of witness, so to speak, then we are beyond the grip or the thrall of time. And to some great extent, we are then afforded this great privilege as sons and daughters of God to live in the crack in the pavement, so to speak, and not be subjected to the dialectic of the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil. So one can remain somewhat impervious or immune to the threat of playing on that checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil. So that's the importance of understanding the fiction of time and getting it as a concept in your mind. But what I was doing 10 years ago was also tethering time to money and doing what I could to explain the false light economy of the world, which is premised, of course, on the root of all sin and evil, which is usury, exploitation, manipulation, dominion, all of that issues through money being a totem of time, a 3D totem of time. So time and money became, in that sense, the same element or quanta. And fear became the issue. It becomes the necessary issue of anything that is anchored in the fiction of time or tethered to the false light of money. So that then described the entirety of our delightfully fucked up worldview, which is predicated on time, money, fear, the same source code, same equation. And moving beyond that was then, and looking to discern what lay beyond or what lies beyond that became the imperative for me. And then understanding, curiously enough, largely, not entirely, but largely through my interaction with the late great sage Jose Arguelles, the reincarnation of the last of the Mayan high priests, Pacal Votan, who died in 2011, but was the man who decoded the long count Sulcan of the Mayans and put 2012 on the map, as we've discussed before. My extraordinary meeting with Jose Arguelles, which was the most extraordinary meeting ever. I mean, how the synchronicity or the syncretism occurred, bringing him and me together, was to date still the weirdest thing that ever happened to me in my life. The way it happened was so bizarre. But it's like the magus, the magician, when he is ready to appear, appears, makes his appearance, makes his presence felt. And in his case, with Jose Arguelles, he was very much a broken wizard, but a wizard nonetheless, and a remarkably beautiful one, and immeasurably beautiful in the work that he brought to this world, and how he manifested in my life and slapped me around the face to get my full undiluted attention, was next level experience for me, which led me to spending sufficient time with him and his magic wand, whereupon he, in that sense, imparted the law of time to me. The law of time, of course, which he was famed for bringing forth. He brought forth the law of time in the sense, but he also was the world bridger, or the paradigm bridger, who was really threading the end of time. If anyone understands prophecy and understands the harmonic convergence of 1987, and then the end of time in 2012, and then 2020 in Uluru with the Aboriginals. Those stepping stones were describing the terminal end of time as we've understood it as a conscious species hitherto for hundreds of billions of years to this point. So I'm just trying to give a big eagle's eye view of the importance of, departing from time, departing from money, departing from fear, giving rise to my understanding, largely, not entirely, through Jose Arguelles of the need to supplant the idea of time with the idea of art. So time is not money. Time is art. Whereas we have been led to believe that time is money. And of course, that perversion perfectly describes how fucked up we've been civilizationally in equating time with money. What a diabolical and grotesque notion. What an absolute perversion of God's grace is that. Time is money. Really? How about time is life? How about time is orgasm? How about time is euphoria and time is bliss? But the way that Jose Arguelles put it was time is art. And of course, he's correct. Time is our capacity to create and to expand and to affirm. And so learning as I did from him, the law of time, and then the importance of supplanting the idea of time is money to time is art, one moved forward and understood the elevation of beauty. And I'm not talking about beautiful men and women and, things that look picture perfect. I'm talking about beauty as resonance, beauty as syncretism, beauty as grace incarnate in a multiplicity of ways, in a billion different ways. Beauty of a sunset, beauty of a nasturtium or a daffodil, beauty of a butterfly, beauty of every creature that ever existed on the face of the earth, including the mutants. Beauty in the cellular structure of a leaf. Beauty in the turbulence of an ocean wave. Beauty in the darkened, looming hurricane in the sky. Beauty in a drop of water or dew. Beauty in everything, because beauty is imbued in everything. And it's only once we enjoin our innate capacity to recognize and affirm everything as being beautifully appointed and beautifully anointed, that is where we enter God's grace and become as children, and thereby permitted to enter the kingdom of heaven on earth, and certainly to manifest it in accordance with that living principle. But then art, beauty, and consciousness being the trifecta here, consciousness is the all, is everything. When we recognize the sanctity of life and the sanctity of consciousness being in all that is, rock, the telluric consciousness of the stones and the minerals, and the elemental consciousness of the inner earth, and all of the things that crawl around in the soil biome, and then on the surface of the earth, the microbes, the millions to the power of millions of different species that exist at the microbial level, and then to the level of zebras and kudu and elephants and rhinoceroses, and the thousands and thousands of species of cats and dogs and parrots and all the rest of it. And then of course you've got the human being, the monster. You've got the monster on two legs with two arms, and the human being staggering around in its essence, spiritual, primordial soup. Still, we're still kind of clambering around in the shallows, at best, embodying, enacting 3, 4, 5% of our capacitance as angelic beings. Nonetheless, look how incredibly beautiful we are, and So and it's because of the consciousness that is imbued in everything. So art, beauty, and consciousness became the ABC to the human heart. In that sense, I can safely say that. I can extrapolate now more into taking that algorithm even further to a bliss point, which is to recognize that actually the euphoria, the bliss, and the galactic orgasm, so to speak, actually exists in the still point, which is where we transmute and even transcend the art, the beauty, and the consciousness in truth, where we take it into the cradle, or as I prefer to call it, seated squarely on the throne of perfect witness. And the throne of perfect witness is the galactic climax, because that is where we move into convention or conjugation with God Almighty, so to speak, and momentarily one can oscillate one's consciousness into that state of absolute serendipity and grace and emancipation. It's very, very difficult to hold that state of grace in physicality and then still go about one's business in this delightfully fucked up world. But it is the benediction of the gods to the human, is that we do have that capacitance. And so I would say the ABC of the human heart served me well in my journey of the last quarter of a century, but I'm taking it now to a space, a 0 point and a 0 point social ecology, a 0 point social economy, a 0 point state of grace and perennial witness that I believe will demarcate our departure from being a stupid species into being a superluminal one. So we're moving rapidly now toward, and I don't mean toward externally, I mean toward internally. There's a collective internal or recursive motion that's happening. And it's the pulling in of all that is worthy, all that is righteous and judicious and sacred and beautiful, that's being pulled into a central fusion point. And that's what's happening in our lifetime. For sure, it's happening in our lifetime. And that's going to demarcate the activation of the noosphere and of the spiral of Alcyone, or the ascension spiral, receiving not just the human, because we are the capacitor of that ascension process. We are the prime capacitors for that, to be able to bring that that umbilical to all of creation through, again, the linguistic wave genetics of our DNA, mRNA, so to speak. Again, that's exactly why the whole COVID thing, that's why the mRNA intervention, that's why the last 100 years of systemic chemical poisoning of every living system on Earth to try and saturate our DNA, mRNA with these synthetic molecules in order to prevent that spiral of ascension from activating.
Yeah, so good. Thank you. I was going to ask you, and it might be a bit of overlap, but if there's anything else to add, I was going to ask you how your understanding of God had evolved or expanded throughout that journey.
I've never had any notion of God. So let's be clear. Either I'm the most irreverent, godless soul that ever wandered on the surface of the earth, or I was born with an immanent, innate connection to Godhead, which precluded me needing to try to envision or visualize or imagine some kind of totem, some kind of objective, because I never once bothered to even sit and think about it. Not as a child, not in my infancy. And I remember going back to being only a few months old. I've got liquid memory of my infancy and childhood. So I remember absolutely, painstakingly, I remember that. And I just was born imbued, absolutely imbued with it. So there's never been any concoction in my mind's eye of what God might look like or sound like or feel like. I think I recognize, as many of us do, I'm certain of it, I recognize the intrinsic, immanent, umbilical connection between myself and the Godhead altogether. I certainly don't particularly like the word God. I don't like the term. I've always felt slightly repelled by it. I do believe that it probably is connected to inversion logic and Sabbatean satanic inversion. So with the best will in the world, we ought not to be even using the term God, I believe. I don't approve of the term Jehovah whatsoever. I don't approve of the notion of Elohim whatsoever. I don't approve of giving any name to that which is foundationally ineffable and so sacrosanct that it should never be spoken of. In that sense, everything happens under the thrall of the eternal gaze. That's fucking obvious. So why do we even have these inane psycho-intellectual and spiritual debates? Is beyond me. I just think it's so silly. But God for me does not exist in that sense. But as I think and hope my own life's work is a testament to the fact that everything is in a state of godliness. Everything is and must be godly in its nature, its character, its purpose, its mission, its and that which fuels it as well. So what am I speaking about? I'm talking about evolving beyond a 2D or 3D idea of a relationship with God into a superluminal state of witness, whereupon the conversation is inane, is banal. To even discuss it is banal and an insult to all that is godly and divine. So that's the end of it. That's the end of it. And I grew up in sub-Saharan Africa, as you know, in a war, largely behind grenade screens and what have you, and in pretty dangerous and fractious way for a child, to be sure. We've discussed this in the past. And what I know is that a bougainvillea flower was always my redemption. I mean, I happen to be looking out the windows here and I can see scarlet bougainvillea, but I looked out of my windows and through the grenade screens in my youth at the age of 6, 7, 8, and I could see crimson, scarlet bougainvillea flowers and frangipanis, and there it is. There's the juxtaposition of this incredible beauty and godliness that's here, there, and everywhere. And what are the constructs that inhibit our relationship with that flower, with that tree, with that ocean, with that mountain, with that sacred soil, with that, what is the construct that creates the prohibition or the inhibition for that relationship to be absolutely symbiotic? Well, it's man-made artifice. It's a prison cell. It's walls, it's fences and walls and grenade screens and security fences, and it's boundaries, these revolting things called boundaries, that the modern man is addicted to. This idea of boundaries, the most toxic thing ever conceived. As I've said many times, healthy boundaries are the very worst of them. So we should be boundless. We were born thus. We will die thus. And it makes sense only to remain boundless in life and never circumscribe the need for boundaries. Because if one is standing in one's sovereignty and one is flaming one's auric field sufficiently, that becomes a self-revealing, self-manifesting, self-fulfilling boundary that needs not to be given a name, in the same way that we ought not to be giving God a name. So yeah, I'm a Puritan in that sense, but I'll stop wheezing for a moment.
I like that. Not you stopping wheezing. I like what you said. So I was also going to, so the same journey, how did your understanding of love evolve over that time that you were also exploring the human heart?
Well, I don't know that I'm a very good subject to speak to that because in so many ways, I think I'm just not a very good representative of that mundane subject. Because I do believe it to be mundane. And I'll try to explain why without sounding like an arrogant prick. But mundane because everything issues off love. It is crystal clear that the eruption of in the galaxy and that issues out of the black hole at the heart of a galaxy and the so-called sound that issues, which becomes light, which becomes matter, which accretes into planets and suns and moons and things in the firmament. All of that's creation issues out of a mammoth, epic love event. The event horizon is always love, has to be. And we're born from it and we die to it. So trying to then speak to the human notion of love becomes a uniquely vapid and banal and mundane matter to my mind. Now, I may be wrong about that. I probably am wrong about that. I'll give that much. Because I too have read Keats, and I too have read Blake, and I too have read Gibran. You know, I understand the language of love, which is to say poetry. But I'm damned if I understand the thing. And I'm damned if I want to. I'm damned if I can. I'm damned if any of us can. And I think that so long as we're toying with the idea of love beyond a certain point, we're wasting an otherwise incredible opportunity to be moved by the inertia of the thing into greater unfoldment of creative expression, and thereby manifesting art, beauty, and consciousness in abundance limitlessly. So I hope you understand what I'm driving at, that love must become the fuel, but it mustn't ever be my pursuit of the idea of love or my investigation into love or even my playing with the banal kind of apparatus of human romantic love. I think that's a self-fulfilling, again, self-revealing, self-fulfilling sequence of hapless events and outcomes when we are seeking romantic love. And let's try and break it down a little bit here. You either feel that sense of love or you don't, but most people seem to be searching for it and looking for it, and that's become a thing, this endless whinging and pining for the great love, for the twin flame, which is such a jack-off idea. I'm sorry, I cannot abide it, but that's me. I cannot abide the idea. I'm certain the twin flames exist, incidentally. I'm certain of it. But I just can't bear the idea of that becoming a talking point. I think, again, these things happen when they happen, and they will always happen at the divinely anointed and appointed time, so to speak. So just get on with being in a state of grace until these great event horizons erupt into your field. And they will come always at the right time. But when you start to appoint your time and your motion towards seeking them and searching for them, trying to conjure them, trying to manifest them, now you're doing the work not of God. In my view, you're closer to doing the work of the devil, unbeknownst to yourself, because you start getting into this perverse logic of manipulation, engineering, orchestrating, tantalizing, seducing, and you get into all of this language of love, you know, and And I think that it ends up, certainly for young people, it ends up eclipsing, or it can end up eclipsing and commandeering a great chapter or swathe of your life, is this kind of hapless search for something which is indecipherable, indefinable, and ultimately you don't find it. And this idea that romantic love pays dividends, it doesn't, in my view. I use the example of looking around to see relationships that I know in my life, and out of the thousands of relationships that I know, there are possibly a dozen that I could exemplify and say, well, out of 5,000 people or couples that I've kind of observed one way or the other in the last 30 plus 40 years, there's maybe I could sit down with a pen and paper and recall half a dozen to a dozen at most that exemplified a perfect pitch. And I can't even think of 6, so I'm lying. I'm stretching the envelope. I can maybe think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head. But the point I'm making is this, is that in the main, romantic love does not yield dividends unless one enters into the transpersonal element or aspect of romance, of romantic love, and you fully enter into romance, just into romance, into being romance with the sun, moon, and stars, romance with life, romance with the whole of creation. Become a romantic. Yes, absolutely. I love that. But don't direct it as a fucking weapon towards some other hapless individual, and that's the Cupid's arrow thing. It is an affliction. Love is an affliction. In that sense, it's a damned affliction. And I personally love loving, and I love observing beauty, and I love being in the company of grace and charisma and sexiness and all that stuff. But I don't want to name it. I don't want to bag it. I don't want to compartmentalize. I don't want to contain it. Don't want to own it. I want to be completely present in it. And it's hard. It's really hard, because we're, as a species, we've been so, in a sense, cultured, programmed into containment and to ownership and into stake your claim, take it, get it while you can, lock it down, nail it down, own it, contract it, bind it with spells and bonds and contracts quickly, get the ring, get the this, get the that. So we fall into this vile soup of contracts and bonds and spells, which 9 out of 10, or possibly, I'll be gracious, 7 to 8 times out of 10 is a fail, ends up being a companionship, ends up being a kind of life of convenience, of habit. Because we ultimately do, most of us ultimately give up the ghost of that romantic love nonsense. So yeah, I probably scorched the subject sufficiently. I didn't mean to be too irreverent. It's just that I have little to no time for romantic love, even although I am a complete romantic and a fool at that.
Sacha, you're frozen, unfortunately. I don't know if there's anything you can do at your end.
Not much beyond.
There you go. Hey. Okay. So I wanted to go back to your meeting with the maestro Jose. Sorry, I've forgotten his surname. And how do you feel? Does that have any connection with you now, based in Bacalar and building New Earth Sanctuary?
You're talking about the short film I made with the maestro Memon?
No, I'm talking about the gentleman you were talking about earlier in our interview.
Oh, Jose Arguelles.
Yes.
Yes, forgive me. What's the question?
Okay. Do you think when was that meeting? And in hindsight, do you think that had any connection to you in Bacalar now and creating New Earth Sanctuary?
Great question for me. Yes, yes, and yes, and I'll try to explain. So I was in London, and I was on the computer, and it was late at night, possibly 11 o'clock at night, 11 midnight, something like that. And I came across something popped up on Google, and this must have been 2008, and it was a little quotation that I saw in a feed, and the quotation was enchanting. It mesmerized me, and so I took that quotation, wrote it down, and then typed it into Google, because I thought, I want to know the source of that. Is it prose? Is it a poem? That beautiful line. And up comes a YouTube video on the Google search, and with an old man with white hair playing a flute of some description, some kind of, and I pressed play, listened to it, and it, lo and behold, it was some old shaman playing this incredible flute and then saying a prayer. And I think it was the prayer of the 7 directions or something like that. And I was completely enchanted by this, and started doing my usual weepy nonsense, utterly transfixed by this prayer and the flute playing and what was being transmitted by this being. And I'd never heard of this man before. I saw his name was Jose Arguelles, right? So now I've been about 55 minutes, an hour, I'm locked into watching this guy playing this flute, and I'm playing it again and again. And I'm studying the words of the prayer of the 7 directions. I think that's what it was called. And it's now midnight, or early hours, maybe earlier, of the morning. And I get a Skype call comes through on my screen. And I immediately just canceled it, like, go away. And it came back again. I canceled it. Third time it came on, I thought, well, it was a friend of mine in Australia, actually. And I thought, well, I better just answer it and tell him to please bugger off. I'm having a moment. And he was a good friend, a beloved friend, Kim Kindersley, the film director, the man who made the beautiful film Whale Dreamers. And it was Kim Kindersley phoning me. So I opened the Skype and I just said, Kimbo, brother, I'm having a little moment right now. Can I call you back later or tomorrow? And he said, no. I said, excuse me? He said, no, absolutely not. He said, I need your attention right now, right here, right now. I said, Kim, did you hear what I just said? You know, I'm having a moment. And he said, Sacha, stop. He said, I have a man next to me who insists on meeting you. And he walked aside, and there was Jose Arguelles.
I got goosebumps.
So you tell me how that is remotely possible. I've never heard of the man's name in my life. An hour before, I'm simply going through stuff. I see a quote. That quote hits me. I search the name of the guy. I type the name in. Up comes a YouTube video. I watch the YouTube video. I start bawling. I start learning the prayer of the 7 directions. And within the hour, that man out of nowhere on the other side of the planet is commanding my attention on a screen. Of course, I burst into tears. I see this guy looking at me. I burst into tears. And he's very stone-faced and not moved by any emotional nonsense, and simply says to me, we need to meet, you know. And we took up a dialogue at that point. And a few weeks later, I was at my home in Bali, and he got on a plane and he came to see me with the wand. He brought the wand with him and stayed about a month in my villa in Bali. And he was decoding his star codes for that month whilst he was there, and doing what he was wont to do as one of the world's most extraordinary prophets and viziers. And in the course of that time, we engaged very closely, obviously, and I learned a great deal from him, and that became a kind of signature in the story that I was then taking forward. So to answer your question, he at that time was wanting me to take forward his life's work, which was the manifestation of what he called Crest 13. 13 hubs that needed to be built around the world in different parts of the world in order to be the activation point for the noosphere and for the emancipation of this plane of existence, in order for us to survive the stargate, so to speak, that was closing. So it's very real stuff, stuff which in those days I didn't understand too much about, thought it was a bit woo-woo, but was prepared to listen and learn. And fortunately, I did. And I now recognize that there was nothing woo-woo whatsoever about any of it, that actually it was desperately serious stuff. And it was indeed connected to prophecy. So the short answer to the story is I have not, subsequent to that, taken forth any of Jose Arguelles's work. We had a falling out, unfortunately, the following year. I was setting about creating a huge event for him called the Noosphere Congress, which I designed. And I was going to bring in world leaders and do my thing and create a big, huge event to consolidate the focus of what his life's work was all about. And I was building and engineering at that time. We were planning to build the largest bamboo dome anywhere on earth in Bali. We were going to do the Congress there. And all of that fell flat because some interlopers or some naysayers, some nasty motherfuckers got hold of him and tried to poison him against me. And he was stupid enough to fall for it momentarily and challenged me. I was enraged by that. I thought so much more of him, and I thought that a man of his insight would know what is truth from what is a lie. And since the mid 2000s, I've been under such savage attack and trolling attack and defamations and slanders and all of that stuff, that if you read some shit about me on the web, if you can choose to believe it, of course you can choose to believe it. But if you know me and you've been in my countenance and you've been in my presence and you still don't know me, then the shame is entirely upon you. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, because I carry the flame of pure truth and I'm not apologetic about it. I'm not sanctimonious about it. I'm just honest about it. It's what I do in this world. It's what I've done for many, many decades. And that's not going to change. And as my enemies and these fireflies, fall about at my feet, I'm walking in a straight line, and that never changes. And just go from strength to strength to strength. So at that time, I was very disappointed in him because he dared to write to me and challenge me about the veracity of certain things that had been told to him. And I essentially said to him, listen, old man, you're the oracle, you're the vizier, you're the fucking prophet, you work it out. I've done by you all this grace and kindness and generosity. And I'm going to leave you in the shallows to work out who I am. I'm the one bringing the world to you. So don't be challenging the integrity of who I am. I've done everything in grace and through my generosity and my pocket as well. So it came to one of those kind of standoff things. And I'm afraid no one must cross me when it comes to that. I don't care who you are. I don't care what wand you carry. And alas, that was the end of the relationship. So I canceled the Noosphere Congress, which is a great shame because it would have been a huge success had I done it, without any doubt. And he unfortunately went on to Australia and died somewhat ignominiously not long thereafter in 2011. So sad, but I have to say, that none of that matters. None of that matters. What matters is the extraordinary work that he did in the course of his life, which was just so earth-changing. And I'm graced and blessed to have known and loved him and still do. And I believe he is threading the ages and threading the paradigm right now as we speak. I believe that he holds that very unique signature at the soul level. I know that he was a broken man because his son died. And to some extent, he reached for the bottle, and that should never have happened. And but human, all too human. We, all of us, have our Achilles heel, and invariably it will kill us if we're not very, very cautious. But believe you me, Jose Arguelles to me is one special soul, and I believe that his legacy and his work will ultimately become recognized by every living soul on this planet. When we're fully through this extraordinary portal that we're moving through right now, history will reflect. I know it will. because I will ensure it. History will reflect that Jose Arguelles and the harmonic convergence of 16th of August 1987 that he catalyzed was the single biggest and most important event on Earth, which, as I continue telling folks, even 2 or 3 years ago, Wikipedia was acknowledging that the harmonic convergence was, in fact, the biggest event that ever happened on Earth. And that was entirely, in my view, due to Jose Arguelles, who was the true prophet in that sense. And that threaded us again to 2012 and 2020. Now we've passed out of the thrall of time, and we're free now to begin to ideate and manifest the kingdom of heaven on earth. And I'm certainly doing that as part of my mandate. So to finally try and answer the question, I'm not continuing the work of Jose Arguelles in any way, shape, or form, except to say that I am absolutely carrying out the mission and vision of Jose Arguelles in every sense of the word as well, because that's the truth of the matter. I don't subscribe to the Crest 13 idea. I didn't like it at the time. I didn't think it was made particular resonance sense to me. But the idea of establishing patterns of perfection and to build zero-point social ecology, social economy, and elevating art, beauty, and consciousness, and creating complete full-spectrum sovereign jurisdiction of enlightened people and good souls, and reconvening the relationship between sons and daughters of God and the living soil. That's my work and my mandate, as it was the work and the mandate of Jose Arguelles. So they become the two of them pretty much the same mission in that sense.
So what took you to Mexico and Bacalar specifically? And can you share with us your journey to actually saying, yes, this is where I'm going to create my New Earth Sanctuary, our New Earth Sanctuary? Yeah. And yeah, can you share that, Tony?
Well, I knew that I couldn't do it in Bali because Bali is too belligerent, and having built in Bali and established the New Earth Haven in Bali, I could see that I couldn't push it beyond a certain point. I couldn't grow the model. Number one, there's a very toxic thing in Bali called the community. This is the kind of spiritual transients who come through doing their yoga, shmoga, and having their cacao ceremonies and what have you. And although Akasha, New Earth Haven, became a kind of mecca for those ecstatic dances and cacao ceremonies and what have you, there was a huge element of group shadow within the so-called community, which I found very toxic from the get-go. Many years ago, I found it toxic. I always avoided it myself, but I wanted to see how it would play out with the New Earth Haven. But lots of jealousy and bitterness and silliness and small-mindedness, and it just didn't have sufficient noble spirit at the collective level. It still doesn't. It's still full of shit, the island. And I've always called it out, and I always will. It's even me hacking off my own arms and legs, because that's where technically my home and my business has. But I don't care. I don't like that group shadow thing, unless it finds itself in sovereignty, in the sovereign state of grace. I just think it's really toxic. And so I made a determination 3 years ago, really before COVID. We were thundering along, 700, 800, 900 people turning up every weekend at the New Earth Haven for the ceremonies and the ecstatic dances and the micro festivals and what have you. And a lot of lovely people, don't get me wrong, beautiful people and lovely people, but a kind of group shadow element that I just realized was never going to allow this project to really take root in Bali, because there was too much small-mindedness, too much pettiness, people who were not realized and affluent. They hadn't, there were people who were transient, and then they find community, and then they lean their shadows in together. They create a vernacular and a language together, which kind of indemnifies them against reality in a sense. And then they go around threading their bullshit to one another, trying to, make money off one another, trying to find relevancy. And that's all good. There's nothing wrong with all of that, except it was just somewhat infantile and spiritually unevolved at the collective level. I recognized that was not going to be the thrust or the inertia of a New Earth big project. Couldn't. So, and also Indonesia's a Muslim country. And so that's prohibitive to Americans and a lot of other people in the Western world. And my network, my followers, so to speak, are principally Middle Americans. The people I align most with in this world are those that hold a Bible in one hand and a gun in the other. So, you know, the Middle American and Middle Englander and Middle, you know, Dutchman, the Middle Earth people are my people. The ones, yeah. And I knew that the kind of people who fly to Bali, you know, wearing feathers and what have you, are not Middle Earthers, just not, you know. And so I had to really recognize that I'd set up a great litmus test, a great petri dish with the New Earth Haven, and I needed to study it, look at it, and that's what I've done. That's what I've done. I used it to really study the ecology and the economy and then scale it and then look at how. And I was waiting for the right location to present itself to me, because what I learned many years ago, before I even set out, was that you don't go looking for something. You prepare yourself in order to receive it. And so that's what I was doing. I was preparing myself at the center of the Petri dish experiment, and being in a state of receptivity. And when I decided to go and do the Arise tour in the United States at the beginning of COVID, and thought, well, not the beginning, but at the beginning of 2021, a year into COVID, I decided we were in such perilous threat, the world, that I just wanted to throw myself totally into the front line. And I put all my ambitions on hold for everything else. Like, you know, everything else went on hold. I said, no, I'm going into the trenches. I'm going to be at the front of it, and I'm going to be unrelenting, because I've got that much fire. And that's what I did. And the minute I could get on a plane, I went to America, did that insane tour across America, which was the best thing I ever did, in a sense, because that was really where I understood the heart of the Middle Earth, heart of humanity, with the thing I was seeking, the ABC thing. I found it that in that year, in 2021, as I jokingly say, when I was transfected with the spike protein from 1 million people for the million hugs, you know, coast to coast in America. It was the most beautiful thing imaginable. I became very ill, as we all did, and but when I came after the tour to recover, and we'd lost a number of people that died on the tour, I think 6 or 7. Yeah, a number of people died on the tour. Robert David Steele then died at the end, and then Kirsten W. died on her way actually to meet me in Malibu. And that was just like, wow. Now, Scott McKay, myself, and a handful of others know what happened on that tour. We know how dangerous it was. We know what really happened. We've never really spoken about it. But I did need to recover. And I came to Mexico, to Tulum, because it was easy enough for me to do. And I also had the threat of NSA picking me up and arresting me, because someone was creating real problems for me, trying to get me into a lot of trouble. And someone in the intelligence community, put it that way, was trying to create a drag net for me to get picked up and taken down. And I could see what was happening. So I needed to get out. And the easiest way to do it at that time was pop across the border to Mexico. I was very nervous about getting on an airplane or which border I was going to depart, but we chose Mexico, and I came through and went to Tulum to recuperate. And I couldn't stand the frequency of alcohol and party and stuff in Tulum beyond a certain point. It's great fun at the surface, but it's not my thing. And then I came down to Bacalar Laguna, had a couple of people who I knew here, came down, experienced the water in the Laguna, and felt utterly transformed. And then I became obsessed with looking at the molecule of the water and identifying what it is. And when we discovered that it was the stromatolite base, the oldest DNA on Earth is the basin of the Laguna here, is the oldest DNA. It's the genesis DNA of all living systems on Earth. Then I was like, wow, this is ground zero. That's what I picked up. There was also an experience with a white horse that I had, which was fun, but not fun, but that was a totem for me that I had to also learn from. And I'd asked the horse to give me the totem, which it did, and threw me to the ground, almost broke my back. And that was also a sign for me that this is where you stay. You do not keep running around the world and flying around the world. This is ground zero. And so I listened to those totems, listened to the jungle. I had an extraterrestrial engagement as well, and then made a determination that's absolutely it. And went through a necessary birth pang of about 6 months of nasty, turbulent shit with some scurrilous individuals here. A number of court cases pending on that, but got through those hoops. Took a big hit personally, financially, but it was all good because it was putting the key in and turning the key. And here we are now on the cusp of takeoff, and it couldn't be more exciting. I mean, last night had a beautiful Christmas dinner party here with some of our pioneering folks and investors. It was just absolutely beautiful people, just all of them, just wonderful, wonderful humans. And there's so many of them coming in. We've got a big community already here. I've said to them, we're not ready. With building starts hopefully before the end of Q1 of next year. But, we're nonetheless, community has moved. We've got people moved here and settled here and in a state of readiness, some of whom are now integrating with the administration. We've got a very big team, put it that way, very big ground force. And we've set things up in such a way that it's going to be, without any question of doubt, the biggest and most important so-called conscious community template ever conceived of anywhere on Earth. That much I know, because I've been at this game for a long time, and I know what's happened out there. I know about the previous enterprises and ashrams and like the Oroville and these kinds of wonderful exercises that have gone before. Nothing of this scale has ever been conceived. And it's taken a long time to get the apparatus right and the infrastructure right, but we've done it. We are receiving considerable revenues already, and we haven't even really launched. Formally, we'll launch on the 10th, 11th, 12th of February next year at the Conscious Life Expo. I'll be unveiling, finally, after keeping stum for 1 year, I'll be unveiling the big plans and the timelines and the economy, because we've also created our economy. We have our own coin now. It's registered and it's functioning and it's ready for launch. So we've got a very exciting launch happening in February, and that's going to go on really from February in California. I'll be doing 3 or 4 engagements there. Then I'll be coming back here to consecrate, lay the cornerstone. Spring equinox, that's planned for spring equinox. And then I'll be here through April conducting retreat and what have you. And I think June, April and May, and then June into July. I'm so sorry. July, August, I'm touring in Europe. That's being planned right now, multiple countries in Europe, and taking the project into a theater production, big theater production, because it's not a sales pitch. I don't need to sell anything. We can hardly hold the door shut with investors wanting to break through, but it's not a sales tour. It's where we just flash open the kimono completely and show, in my speaking for myself, 1/4 century of dedication is now mapped. And with all of the acumen and the skills and the input of the beautiful people in my very extensive team, all of the creative ideas, our bioarchitecture, our master planning, the temples and the museums and the artisanal villages and all the things that we're building and creating are going to be pretty much exemplified in public view, as well as making available residential homes for about 2,000 people. So we're going to be probably capping at about 2,000 residents and anticipating 1,000 visitors a day when we're fully fledged. So this is a 60-month program. I think we'll be opening early gates for sure. 12 to 18 months from now, we'll be opening early gates on things like retreat centers and things like that. And obviously showrooms and blah, blah, blah. And then an exponential build. We'll be building on 3 8-hour shifts. So our build out will take place probably 3 times quicker than anything else. Because we've got those permissions, and yeah, it's all good. There's no part of what we're doing now that I have any apprehension or concerns about. You know, the collapse of the global economy notwithstanding, and I have to say, I'm not even concerned about that, because the way this project has been conceived now and that the canvas has been primed is in such a way as to take into account the fact that the world is likely to flatline in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, so exciting, Sacha. Is this something like are you planning just to stay then in Mexico with this project, or once this one's established, are you planning on expanding into other areas of the world?
Well, like I said, it's a planetary template, and that was the impetus was to create a planetary template, and one that could become a full spectrum alpha omega template with its own ring-fenced economy, its own currency, its exchange, its economy, and that we could then take and not daisy chain, so to speak, but we could technically daisy chain it. I'll give you an example. I've got literally thousands of hectares available to us now from our partners who own the land. Many, 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 many thousands of acres beyond what we are already containing. And that's on offer. And my answer is no. We don't want or need more land than what we've got right now and that we're closing on now to contain the bubble of the project. Let's get this one right and get this economy moving. So we'll fix the economy. Once we've issued X amount of coins, that's it. We will not be diluting your coins. They'll only be raising in value. They'll never be diluted. So we've taken a decision on. Actually, today I had about 8 or 9 of the team on earlier today with G Money Garrett, who has architected the coin for us, tethered to Bitcoin, which is the only truly safe crypto. So we're all good there. Once we've proven this model, we can cookie cutter it. I prefer the idea of cookie cutter than daisy chain. I don't want one sanctuary to be reliant on another sanctuary. I want them to be entirely inward looking. But then at a given point, we will establish a convergence mechanism for these different microeconomies to be able to completely interact and exchange. Yeah.
Oh, so good. Okay, I know you have to go soon, Sacha. So I pinched your last question. I'm going to throw it back to you. So if you could have a dinner party with anyone living or dead, who would you invite and what would be on the menu?
Oh, so that's a really, really difficult one for me, because it's a difficult one for me because I'm just so enchanted with so many souls, so many souls. Off the top of my head, I have a deep and I have a deep and abiding love for Florence Nightingale. That is just beyond. I don't know if that woman was my mother or wife or sister in a last lifetime, but I am so in love with Florence Nightingale. I mean, my God, she was nothing to look at, be sure. She was about as attractive as Queen Victoria, but I am so in love with Florence Nightingale. But I think it was her frequency that she struck, and that she represented this flame of pure truth in her generation. And she came in just as a caregiver, just somebody to come in and anchor the angelic force into this world, and to also knock out the Victorian shit. She was promulgating, sunlight, fresh water, and fresh air. that was the doctor. And she said, everything else is bullshit. The human body is the temple. It has everything to fix everything in it. You don't need to stick anything into the body, nothing at all. And she was absolutely right, you know. And here we are, a century later, billions and billions of souls culled by disease and pestilence. And she was right. And now we have a return to that angelic template. So Florence Nightingale, for me, is always top of my list. Other characters that I like, historical characters. I'm not particularly given to having dinner with religious avatars. I prefer rowdy ones. I think that George Gurdjieff, for me, was a great hero. And he died in the 1940s, I think it was. He partnered up momentarily with Ouspensky. But Gurdjieff was, for me, a great, irreverent, an example of a good human, again, in that Edwardian, Victorian Edwardian era, where he was saying to people, do the opposite of everything you think, everything you're taught, do the opposite of, and you'll be halfway closer to the truth. But he was very irreverent. He was a womanizer, smoked cigars, swore like a trooper, had a fantastic moustache, and was a guru, a complete guru in the true sense of the word, in that he always had a perfect answer, and was his, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson is one of the most remarkable books. Not that I've read it. I kind of dabbled, looked in it. But that was something, he was a worthy archetype that came in to cull the sacred cows at that time as well. Very, very powerful being. So I would be very, very satisfied with Gurdjieff at the table, and Florence Nightingale, one that represent the Magdalene and the completely sanctified feminine grace, and the other one that represented the most deplorable, irreverent patriarch. But yeah, they would be fascinating characters. I have to say, I would be very, very interested personally, if I could choose one individual to have a private dinner with, it would be Ignatius Loyola. Because I think he was probably the most pernicious, perfidious, satanic, demonic, wicked, evil, possessed individual in the history of the world. Now, that's my take on Ignatius Loyola, and I would love to be wrong. And the only way I could be wrong is if I could exchange fire in the eyes with him in a private dinner. So, and it would be the closest I could, in my view, be to having dinner with the devil, with Satan. And I would like that because I'm not remotely afraid of the creature in the first instance, not remotely afraid of exchanging fire in the eyes with any devil in this omniverse. It just doesn't scare me. It's not in my repertoire. But I would love to learn what I learn from exchanging fire in the eyes with any of these creatures that have caused such unbearable harm to this world and to all living systems. I'd be fascinated with that because I'm inquiring. I'm always inquiring. I'm interested to learn. And yeah, that's my answer.
Very good. So what would be on the menu?
Well, obviously, if it was Moloch, it'd be little babies, wouldn't it? The joke. All right, that's a joke. It's a joke. All right. What would be on the menu? Well, if it was Satan, I'd definitely serve him something vegan just to piss him off. Right. And if it was Gurdjieff, I'd do the same. If it was, we'll put it this way, I'd definitely be the chef because I am a cook. I'm a very, very competent one. There's nothing I can't turn my hand at. And I've cooked my whole life. And I would cook. What would it be? Honestly, you could take a look at the menu at Akasha, New Earth Haven in Bali, and you'll see what we have on the menu. And I've designed a few of the dishes there. But it would be something very light, and very sensible. Probably a risotto. I'd probably make a souffle just to impress my guests at the front. I'd make a souffle. I'd make some kind of delightful kind of fruit frappe drink. And maybe I'd make a kombucha as well. And I would make a risotto. And then I would make an obscene dessert, some really exotic kind of cheesecakey dessert thing. That's probably the kind of meal I would make. I'd definitely stay away from meat and potatoes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. It's good to get these little insights into you.
Yeah.
Well, Sacha, do you need to go now?
I'm happy to take one more question. I'll leave in 10 minutes if that's okay. And
Okay.
get it.
Well, I do like to continue this conversation about Mexico and New Earth Sanctuary. So I know you're going to do the big reveal in February and next year, but in 10 years' time, our 10 years as we understand it, can you share what you envision happening and how the community is interacting and what it looks like? Can you share that without giving away what you're going to reveal in February?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm happy to speak on this subject at length in any event. Nothing gives me greater joy than that. Look, what do I want? Do you remember those ghastly magazines that the Jehovah's Witness used to put out called the Watchtower?
Oh, vaguely. I usually sent them away before they could show me the magazine.
Because if anyone watching grew up in the 70s or the 80s, and the 60s, you will remember that the Jehovah's Witness used to come knocking on the doors and they would inveigle your grandmother or you or your maid or whoever to letting them come in. And they would offer you a magazine. And then they'd sit down, make them tea, and then they'd start talking and they'd start spinning their nonsense. But what they would do is give you a magazine. And the magazine always had this idyllic view. It would be something like, this beautiful valley and hills and sort of rolling plains and sunset and it's kind of endless kind of skies. And then there'd be sheep gambling on the field. And then there'd be a man sitting amongst the sheep with a suit and tie on, but he'd actually be seated there with other children, sitting on his knee. It was just this insane and little birds and creatures, lovely creatures. It was an insanely reductive and infantile scene of infantile beauty. And that always struck me as a youth as, oh gosh, well, why is the man sitting gambling with little sheep, but he's wearing a suit and tie? That didn't make any sense. But the idea that we're always hearkening to nature, we're always hearkening to limitless beauty in nature, and to be connected to nature and to the creatures of the soil. That's the covenant. The real covenant is the fellowship of man. And to be in a state of perennial bliss and delight and creative expansion and affirmation, surrounded by creatures that we love and adore. And there's no conflict and there's nothing man-made on the horizon, like an antenna or a electrical pylon or a fucking concrete bridge or a skyscraper, much less a fucking airplane in the sky. Nothing like that. My vision of halcyon, of utopia, is just what takes us back to Hyperborea or to the Garden of Eden. The utopian idyll is to reconvene relationship with people, the sons and daughters of God, reconvene relationship with the creatures of the land, and reconvene relationship with the sacred soil, with the trees, the flowers, nature. So, number one, the base of the canvas of the New Earth Sanctuary is, of course, a Garden of Eden. So whether it's primal Mayan jungle wilderness, which much of it will be, with ruins and pyramids and, tangleweed and wild pumas and all of that, it'll also be beautifully manicured botanical gardens, which become their own thing. Endless water, we're building many kilometers of waterworks in the sanctuary. We have the license to do that by the grace of God. So we'll have many kilometers of waterfront properties and homes and features. So there'll be, and then of course there's the actual beachfront on the Laguna, which is substantial as well. So a lot of interplay with the most purified structured water you'll find anywhere on Earth, fed from underwater crystal cenote lakes. Wildlife sanctuaries, butterfly sanctuary, which we're building in the heart, bird sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary, domestic pet rescue sanctuary. Horses will abound. We already have Finkelstein, our first miniature horse, downstairs here. He's waiting for his wife to arrive. But we'll have animals roaming around. We have to be a bit selective about which animals are allowed to just roam, because this is a huge land holdings we're talking about. So there will be animals just roaming. They won't be all contained and pegged. Sheep will be roaming, geese and chickens and peacocks and hens and roosters and felines and horses and cows. And these kinds of creatures will have their own spaces to be able to move freely. On part of the sanctuary, we'll be introducing horses and traps, buggies, in the kind of style of the Amish and what have you, but in a cutesy way, that these become the taxis. So on part of the land, which I'm calling the Alpha Project, is where the 0 point residents will be living. People who are investing in homes and wanting to participate in the 0 point economy. So that's going to become no combustion vehicles, very quiet, very idyllic. Restaurants and cafes in a village and cooperative and, farmers markets and, all of that stuff will still be happening there, but it'll be on a scale that is not interfacing with the world at large. Then on the Omega section, the northern section of the sanctuary is a different zone where people are speculating and buying and investing in property and homes, but aren't going to be living here particularly. So our realty office will be, I guess, Airbnb-ing in that sense, or renting out the properties for people. People can sit on their investments in that sense. It's not a problem. So we're accommodating those kinds of people as well, people who have holiday homes or retirement homes or whatever, what have you. And there's no, how long is a piece of string? Some people are coming in with very minimized budgets, and we're creating beautiful ecological condominium style living with water as well and gardens and what have you, and all the way up to luxury rambling villas with a couple of hectares of private, woodland. Whatever people want, we can accommodate it. So we are actually, it's an expandable model. We're not trying to cookie cutter everyone into defined models of reality. But the economy comes down to 0 point economy, which is that if you're in the Alpha part of the sanctuary, the 0 point residential sanctuary, then everyone's time is worth the same. Whether you're a brain surgeon or you're digging ditches, an hour of your time or a day of your time is worth the same. And you contribute. It's a contribution to society and very egalitarian, very emancipated in that sense. We obviously, are having to police and make sure that this doesn't end up becoming a transient gypsy camp. That's not what this is. You can do that somewhere else if you want, but that's not what this is. So we're not inviting people to turn up in caravans and to plug and play and live on the Laguna front. That's not going to happen. It's got to be a contributionist ecology. It's got to make sense. It's got to be carefully stewarded, certainly for the first 3 years. And that's my pledge to our people, that we watch this very closely and we make those determinations and parameters in a very considered way. The Omega land, again, the one that interfaces with the world at large, will be containing the Museum of Archaeocosmology and the Unity Temple for Unity Consciousness, which huge project that we're building. If you give me screen sharing ability, I can throw up an image just to tantalize you. We're building artisanal villages. We're building an amphitheater for concerts, and there's going to be a lot of events. We're building retreat centers. We're building clinics and spas, boutique hotels as well. So it's going to be a jurisdiction that you could go to and frankly never have to leave ever if you didn't want to. And I want to create it in such a way that you would never want to leave.
Sacha, how do I do the screen share?
You go to the my box on the top right hand. You put your cursor over the top right hand square, drop down, and then make me a host.
I should have done that at the beginning. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No matter. We can do this next time. It's not a problem.
Sorry. Make host. There we go.
Very good.
Wait a minute.
Very
There
good.
we go. Yay. Okay.
So this here is the temple for unity consciousness, more or less. And that's going to be the biggest structure that's built. But the idea is that that's a touchstone for all of humankind, all cultures, all faiths. And no, this is not some satanic, Luciferic nonsense. So anyone who starts that reductive, zealous Christian nonsense, please just stop it, okay? No, this is a temple of unity consciousness in as much as it is inviting all cultures and faiths, interfaith fellowship and intercultural fellowship to be a founding principle, a living principle. Obviously, if you're setting up a true egalitarian conscious jurisdiction, you have to accommodate for the fact that some people are going to be Kabbalistic Jews, others are going to be Orthodox Jews, others are going to be Christians of multiple denominations, others are going to be Hindus, others are going to be Zoroastrians or Taoists or Confucianists. If you're looking for sectarianism and to buy into one particular church, then this is absolutely not for you. If you are returning to the message of the Master Jesus, and the true living gospel of the faith, of the living faith, then this is the place for you. But the same applies to good Muslims and the good any denomination. The fellowship of man is what matters, and a reconvention of our relationship with the sacred soil and with the one living God is the essential piece, and which is to say we need to step away from idolatry, which is to say we need to consciously step away from government, which is to say we need to consciously step away from satanic media and academia and high street and step into lives worth living and take it into full spectrum creative manifestation. No limits. So our engineering department in the New Earth University faculty will be building our own light bulbs and our own computer circuitry. We will not be needing, I don't anticipate needing anything from the outside world in 3 years if we don't want it. Not that it's not welcomed, it's welcomed. We just don't need it. That's the point. So we're not reliant, won't be reliant on the United Nations trade links or the World Trade Organization or these central banks and digitized currencies and all their bullshit. What we need to do is focus on having a bit of copper stockpiled and, rudimentary resources, but we've got limitless stone, limitless timber, limitless water, limitless perfect weather, limitless conscious community. So we basically got the critical mass of a thundering economy anyway, and we're just launching our own coin, as I said, so people will be able to very shortly buy into the coin backed up by land, substantial, very valuable land that is also on an exponential increase in value. The Mayan Riviera is probably the fastest accelerating land economy anywhere in the world that I'm aware of, for sure. So climate, arable land, primary water, conscious community of fellows, surrounded by extensive beauty, natural beauty. What's to say? What's not to love?
Well,
No, let's play devil's advocate for a moment whilst we're here and talk about what the naysayer is going to be saying. Oh, well, what, he never mentioned the cartels. All right, let's talk about the cartels. So I've been here for 2 years, most of the time preparing. And it's been the last year that we've really made the decision to go for this and then set the metric down and begin the process of getting everything ready for massive push out. So I've not been apprehended once by the police. I haven't been stopped and molested going freely about my business by the police once. I speed by virtue of getting into a vehicle, I speed. I'm a dreadful driver in that sense. I'm a safe driver, but I can't help it. I'm a speed junkie. And I'm not suggesting that it's a good thing. I'm just saying I've given so much excuse and reason to be stopped, and no one's been stopped. I've been through checkpoints twice a day, because to get from here to Chetumal, I have to go to a checkpoint, and that's the nearest town for provisions. Every checkpoint we go through, it's a salute, a wave, a smile. You know, I've not been molested one single time in 2 years. And I don't know anyone who has. Cartels, never heard of anything. There's one incident that happened that we were aware of a year ago that we were told was loosely connected to cartels, and it was some chap that we knew who disappeared because he was involved in some dodgy business with land. And we heard, like, what happened to that guy? We heard, oh, he crossed the cartels and he disappeared. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But the point is, if I was living in downtown Chicago, every Tuesday, I would know of somebody who knew of somebody who'd been shot. That's my point. Yeah. Or being kidnapped, or raped, or molested. And everyone has been stopped by the fucking police every week anyway. And everyone is being penalized by robots and by traffic lights and by surveillance cameras. So go figure. This bullshit notion that Mexico is subjected to, lawlessness. No. Your own backyard is what is lawless, trapped in the matrix of the satanic fiction. Mexico is beautiful. The people are kind, are good, are sweet, are gentle. And that's just the way it is. So I know I've made the right decision. All the people who've come here in and around my community feel the same way. It's what we were toasting last night for the Christmas dinner. I allowed everyone around the table to reflect on the year ahead. And I'd say 90% of these pioneers and early investors were affluent people. They had money and have money and are professional people, 90%. And every one of them simply said, I feel like I've arrived exactly where I need to be. I am so happy in being right here, right now. I want for nothing. I'm not looking over my shoulder. Some of them have walked away from family because family banished them, because family bought into the satanic bullshit. But these people on conscience had to walk away in the other direction and participate in building the new earth, because Sodom and Gomorrah is a very real thing. And we are building the antidote to Sodom and Gomorrah right now in real time.
So good. Sacha, one piece we haven't spoken about, which is one of my big interests too, is the children. And what's your vision for families that are coming with young children, and how will the children be educated? And well,
you're baiting me, because I don't have longer than 5 minutes, but I'll try to do it in 5 minutes. And it's a subject I could spend an hour on happily. In simple terms, we already have that. So we already have families with children here. So how are we looking at educating? Well, we're trying to define another word. I don't want to see or hear the word educate or education, because it's a false light word and it carries that poison with it. What we know we need to do is we need to de-weaponize learning, and we need to zero out the programming. So we need to bring 0-point learning into play. How does one do that? Well, in my simple view, the most intelligent way of approaching 0-point learning is to recognize that conscious birthing is the 0 point. Allowing babes to be born into this world, where they are received into this world and they are listened to as the teachers, not the other way around, because they're coming from the heavenly realms, from the celestial realms. They are remembering the languages of the Andromedans and the Pleiades and so on. If we would stop goo-goo gagaing into their faces and programming them from day one with our syntax and our nonsense, and just listen to them for the first few weeks that they come into this world, they will start singing their star songs. And we would be able to then learn that language very quickly from them, especially the mothers would be able to empathically pick up on that language. So we need to start to actually lean into them as they're being born and listen through the umbilical to where they come from. That's step number one, essential in the 0 point learning. And the second piece is to bring them where we do congregate them. We bring them from the age of 3 up to the age of whatever, adults welcomed as well, incidentally, in Daba My Children, as I've spoken to you about, which is storytelling of the Xhosa and the Zulu tradition of Africa, where you sit them in a circle in the mornings and under the trees, under the skies, and they tell stories. And they speak about their dreams. They speak about what they dreamt last night. They speak about their great ambitions. They speak about their fantasies. They bullshit, they lie, they manipulate, they distort, they inflate, they conflate, they imagine, they relate. They feel okay about expressing anything and everything. And then they start to get real, because the morphogenetic flame in that circle starts to check and go, oh, it's not entirely true, is it? Okay. And they start to get real. And we start to check in with each other. And then a morphogenetic trust starts. And this is preferably a centripetal motion that begins a morphogenetic upshift in this collective of youngsters. And they're allowed to do and to be, right? Then there's moderating going on with adults. That's fine. It's got to be very, very carefully done. Then, of course, there is, basic stuff that can be brought before them in terms of the learning of reading and writing and all that nonsense. And then taking it into real time, learning about farming, learning about syntropic agroforestry, learning about all of those arts and crafts, learning stuff, hands-on, send them forth, let them go forth and let them play in the mud, climb the trees. And that's going to be at least half the curriculum. It's going to be hands-on, milking goats, and so on and so forth. Again, no one ever needed education. You needed just to familiarize yourself with the sacred soil, the creatures of the soil, and then the communion and the fellowship of man. That's it.
Oh, brilliant. So exciting. And, I'll be there in a few months. So I'm really looking forward to seeing everything.
Great.
Is taking place. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sacha. Just let people know where they can find you, and I'll drop all the links below.
I can't, I won't know where that is, but I'm sure that Miriam will pass those links on. Thank you very much.
All right. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks again for your time, Sacha.
God bless you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. So thank you for being here, and enjoy your day. Bye.